Welcome to Against the Grain Podcast, Episode 2. I'm going to be your host today, and Josh is going to be our guest here. We're doing a 2-episode series of getting to know me, getting to know Josh. So today, it's all going to be about Josh and basically what got him here and what got him to this point in his life. So welcome to the podcast, Josh.
Thank you, bro. What's up, dude?
Obviously, I think it's very important for our listeners just to learn who we are, because obviously we're going to be hosting this podcast for a little while, or we are the hosts of this podcast, and I think it's important for people to know our background and a little bit more about us. I know we kind of hit it in the first episode, but wasn't too specific and didn't really get into the details. So I'd say let's just start out of high school, bro. So where'd you go to high school? Where'd you grow up? And what'd you do in high school? What did high school look like for you?
I grew up in Fullerton, California. For anybody that doesn't know, it's in Orange County, Southern California area. Went to high school called Sunny Hills. It's just a local high school in Fullerton. And during high school, I didn't do too much like sports stuff. You know, I wasn't really into sports. Not that I didn't enjoy it. I just had, I think, other aspirations. From a very young age, I knew that work was important. I knew that a strong work ethic was important. And I had a lot of odd jobs in high school. And honestly, at the time, they were almost embarrassing. Like my first job was, as you know, I worked at a high school. I was basically vacuuming carpets at our high school. And it was because they needed like extra help. It was weird. They needed extra help, but they were willing to pay me minimum wage. And I was 15 years old making minimum wage vacuuming carpets at my high school. And, you know, for anybody that, you know, everybody that's been in high school or been in that stage in their life, it's obviously not a very glorious thing to have or for people to think of, especially at a young age. But work was always important to me. So that was one thing that I did. But one thing I really focused on a lot in high school is I was a police explorer. As you know, it was with the sheriff's department. It wasn't a police agency, but I dedicated a lot of my time into that because my aspiration was to be a police officer when I, graduated and got out of high school. So I dedicated a lot of time to that, really invested my time there. And it was a lot of things with that. It was, studying, police procedures. It was learning police procedures. It was, going to weekly meetings. It was, participating in ride-alongs. I participated in events a lot on the weekends. Events like they'd have, 5K runs, just different community events, and we would do traffic control and things like that. And in high school, I probably put in, 3,000 hours of community service through that program. But it really, really opened the door for me, kind of opened my eyes to law enforcement and what was out there, and really, I think, did prepare me for my future career in law enforcement.
What age did you start the Police Explorers? Do you remember?
So I started the Police Explorer program when I was 15. And
you're working at the time.
I was working. I had a few jobs. I worked at a restaurant as well. It was like not a sit down restaurant. It was order at the counter. You get served at your table. I worked as a cashier there, and I was getting paid minimum wage again. And it was just one of those things where I was young and I was happy to make money. And dude, if you gave me a $2 tip on a receipt, it made my day. It really did. It really gave me just a passion for working. It showed me the value of work, the value of making your own money, and really making a way for yourself. But I think with that, the Explorer program really kind of cultivated the leadership that I kind of have lived with the rest of my life up to this point.
Did you ever have aspirations to go to college? I know we're kind of jumping ahead, but obviously I know you didn't go to college right after high school. Did you ever have aspirations to go to college, or was it always just police?
No, I didn't. It was never something that I had in my cards. And it was just because I figured, I didn't need a degree to go into law enforcement. And it wasn't something that I never thought I would do. I did have plans that when I was younger, like, I'll try to get my degree while I'm working as a police officer or deputy sheriff. Because the beautiful thing, if you work in law enforcement, for a lot of people that know, and not every agency is like this, but a lot of agencies, at least in Southern California, you work a 3/12 shift. So you got 3 days on, 4 days off, 3 days on, 4 days off. So I knew I would have a lot of time, so I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to try to get hired first, and then maybe I'll go to college while then I'm working in law enforcement.
Yeah, so you started with the Explorer program, and then after graduating, did you stay in the Explorer program, or what did you do after graduating high school? Because I know, obviously, the Explorer program, for people that don't know, you can stay in the Explorer program until you're 21 years old.
Yeah, when you're 21, you age out technically. So I was in the Explorer program. I stayed in, and a big reason was that there was I think maybe 200, 300 explorers. I can't remember right now, but there was a few hundred explorers for the agency that I worked for. It was a sheriff's agency, so it was a little bit larger agency. And It was one of the larger sheriff's agencies in the country. So they had a lot of explorers, and they had a ranking system. And I promoted to basically the rank of, they called commander in the explorer program, where basically I had 300 explorers under me. And it wasn't like I had a major responsibility, but I would coordinate events, I would coordinate trainings, I would coordinate different things that really helped me as I got older. And so when I turned 18, I did stay in the explorer program for a very short time. I was hired as a cadet working at, it was basically the Reserve Bureau, where they were in charge of all reserves, explorers, and all, sworn reserves. So pretty much anybody that was a volunteer for the sheriff's department was under that division.
Yeah, but as a cadet, it's a paid position with the sheriff's department. You're part-time or full-time, right? It can be either one.
Yeah.
But it is actually a paid position with the department. And people are cadets, not even just 18-year-olds. There's older people that are cadets as well, right? Because it's just kind of a small administrative job.
Yeah, it's like a small administrative job. I think most agencies, the idea of it is to get young people in to help prepare them to go into law enforcement, but it isn't limited to any age. So I started that, I remember August of 2013 after I graduated high school. So I worked the summer, worked my job at the restaurant, and then August I finally finished my backgrounds and I started working as a full-time employee with the sheriff's department.
And how long did you do that for? How long were you a cadet for?
I mean, just like everything in life, I was kind of pushing to the next level, and I knew what my goals were, and I knew that to be a deputy sheriff, that was my original goal. I want to be a deputy sheriff, and I had to be 20 years old to go to the academy. So in the meantime, I applied for a position called correctional services assistant, which is basically you work in the jails as a civilian. So you work in county jail as a civilian doing more administrative tasks, but it is a 10-week academy. So I applied for that. You have to be 18 to apply. I applied for that as soon as I got a cadet position, and I started going through backgrounds.
When did you go to the academy for that?
So I went to the academy for that in March of 2014. Okay. And it was about 10 weeks. So I graduated sometime probably in June.
So you're only a cadet for about 6 months.
I was a cadet for about 6 months. It just allowed me, honestly, to get my foot in the door. And it was funny because I started making a lot of contacts at the sheriff's department at the time. I personally knew one of the assistant sheriffs, and it was just because I had done a lot of work with the Reserve Bureau and with that division, and I was there. And so I was kind of like, not up and coming, but I was the young kid that was there, and like I had drive, and people could see it in me. And
for people that don't know too, the Reserve Bureau is located at the Sheriff's Academy, and the Sheriff's Academy just inherently has a lot of higher up individuals that visit that location. I mean, it's an academy, so you're going to run into people like the sheriff, the assistant sheriff, commanders, whatever it may be.
It honestly helped me because I applied for that position, and after I had applied, I wasn't hearing anything back. I did my medical, I did my poly, I kind of did everything.
For CSA or for deputy?
For CSA.
Okay.
And I wasn't hearing anything back. And I remember I'd ran into assistant sheriff at the time, and he's asked me, like, hey, Josh, like, what's up with your background, dude? Because he knew I was trying to get in, like, actually get into law enforcement as a cop. And I was like, I don't know, like, I haven't heard anything back. Well, fast forward, like, the next day, I ended up hearing from my background investigator, so I reached out to him, and he pretty much said, like, I don't know, man, we'll see. You don't have much life experience. And to me, honestly, at the time, it's like, well, this is an entry-level position. I have more of a background than majority of people in applying for these positions. Like, I know my work ethic. I know how this agency works. I know the ins and outs of this agency. Dude, I'm in good shape. I could do everything that anybody else could do.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, kind of pulling away from the sheriff's department thing, as a business owner, if you make minimum qualifications and those persons meet those minimum qualifications, and then you say, oh, you know what, you're not really qualified. As a business owner, how do you see that as even having minimum qualifications?
Well, I mean, honestly, if I was the business owner and I had a hiring manager and they were doing that, it'd make me angry because we're leaving good people on the table, especially when we have a hiring crisis. Like anybody that looks, you can look today, law enforcement has a major hiring issue. And you have good people applying and you're turning them away at a young age saying, oh, you're not ready.
Because that one background investigator tried to deem it that way, exactly. Even though the department itself said, hey, these are the minimum qualifications.
Yeah.
And you meet those minimum qualifications, but it's because one person feels like they have, oh, you know what, they don't have enough experience.
Well, it's because it's an ego thing. Because I'm a cop, why should this guy be allowed to do it? Mm-hmm. Or in that kind of mindset. And that's how a lot of people are. But so anyways, that got back to the assistant sheriff because he had checked up on me a few times. And I said, I don't know. Like he told me I don't have life experience. And he was pissed. He was just livid. He's like, I'm going to handle this for you today. So fast forward 24 hours later, I'm getting a phone call saying, hey man, can you come in to sign your conditional paperwork? You're going to be starting the academy. It's like, it's just, I knew I had the qualifications. I knew I had people in my corner. And sometimes it takes that. Sometimes it takes someone in your corner that sees you and like is going to step on that idiot that's trying to stop you from getting there. And nothing against this guy particularly, but at the end of the day, I remember who he was. I know his name. He was overweight. probably not very good at his job. If you're a police officer and you're over 300 pounds, you're a complete liability. And you're sitting there telling me I can't do this job, and I'm an 18-year-old, fully able-bodied man. Like, come on, dude, get the hell out of here. So,
I agree.
Anyways, obviously I ended up getting hired. I go to the academy at 18 years old, and day one, typically for anybody that doesn't know, day one of the academy, you're, if you're the class sergeant or the class assistant, basically the two people in charge of your academy class, you're probably the worst of the pack. So what they did was, because I had known the...
and why is that? Why do they put people that are the worst in those positions?
Because they're the most difficult positions to carry, and they want to get them out.
They're just trying to weed out the weak in the
Trying
beginning.
to weed out the weak. So what they ended up doing was, I knew both academy TAC officers personally from my prior work with the sheriff's department. So they thought it was a great idea to put me as class assistant and probably put the worst person in my class as class sergeant. And why they did that was everything, that single thing that he did wrong, they made me answer for and disciplined me for. So like, all right, you can handle it. So you're going to write reports. You're going to run laps. I ran more laps as a civilian in the academy than I did as a civilian going to the deputy academy. I wrote more reports in the CSA academy than I did as a deputy sheriff in a 26-week academy. It's just because they absolutely hammered me.
But isn't that kind of eye-opening to just what law enforcement is too? Like if you have a partner that can't pull their weight, that tries to kiss off calls, tries to sit at the station, tries to not go 10-8, isn't that kind of eye-opening to what law enforcement is? That those people make other cops' lives harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I think number one, it's a learning lesson. They punish you for other people's mistakes because, if your partner is not able to carry their weight, like you said, a lot of times you're the one picking up their slack. But on top of that, not only was it a learning lesson, but they had told me like, hey, if you're going to go to the deputy academy, it's going to be a lot harder than this. Because they already knew like I wasn't applying for this position to stay there. I was applying for this position to get my foot further in the door, to try to get further down the line so I could be a cop.
Yeah, because it might be a stepping stone, but there are people that stay CSAs for 30 years, and that's fine. But a lot of young people use it as a stepping stone.
Yeah, and they knew that, and both my DAC officers knew that. Like I remember we had a physical fitness test, and I had to run a mile. Well, that was one of the parts of the test. I had to run 1 mile, and I ran the fastest mile I've ever ran. I was 18 years old, and I ran a mile in 4 minutes and 58 seconds. And I got disciplined because they asked me, hey, do you think you could have ran it faster? And obviously, like, it's kind of
a loaded question.
It's a loaded question. And I was like, sir, like, yes, I guess if I ran a little bit faster then I could have ran a faster.
Could have got a second faster if you pushed it a tiny bit more.
Well, then you can, run 8 laps. You can write a report. You can do all these things. Because this is even before, like, a lot of people that came in the academy after me, they started restricting what kind of discipline or how much discipline you can get. But at the time, even in the civilian academies, there was no cap on it. You could run 90 laps a week. They didn't care. If that was your discipline, that was your discipline. You had to do it. So, but it was a very good experience for me. I ended up graduating as class sergeant. I was the youngest in the class. Obviously, I was 19 years old when I graduated the CSA academy, and I graduated basically class sergeant. It's basically, you're basically the lead. You're the person that's picked to lead this class.
Do you remember what month you graduated the CSA academy?
I believe it was June.
So June.
Well, so you were March, April, May. It was probably May.
So you graduated May of 2014, and then by January of 2015, you were 20 and you were able to apply to be a deputy, or you could start when you were 20.
So you could start the academy when you were 20 because you had to be 20 and a half when you graduated.
Okay, so you were already within a 6-month or 7-month period of being able to start your next academy at this point.
Yep. So basically when I graduated, I started working at the Intake Release Center in Orange County. I was working in basically a heavy module. It was basically just misfits from everywhere. Some people were fighting, life cases for murder. Some guys, they were, Southern Hispanic gang members, MA associates, and then there was a lot of dropouts. So it was like a split module. We kind of had an array of all the problem children, and they put them all in this bundled area in a housing unit in the IRC.
How is that as a 19-year-old kid seeing these grown men that are basically on trial for life cases, and you're a 19-year-old that just graduated the CSA Academy working in this environment?
Honestly, at the time, it wasn't too intimidating. But I can kind of get into that further because I worked in that same module when I came back as a deputy sheriff. When that happened, I was intimidated. And so, but as my time as a CSA, I just basically worked to go to the academy. And I knew I was gonna be running, doing push-ups, sit-ups, just basically body weight exercise in the academy. So every day on my lunch, I either ran or I did those types of exercises. And, you know, on my lunch breaks, I wasn't running like 2-3 miles. Like I remember there was one day I ran 10 miles on my lunch break because I already knew the reputation I had and I wasn't going to show up day one and be a freaking slug.
Well, and not only that, but you know what to expect. You don't want to show up unprepared. That's just not the person you are. You're not going to show up day one unprepared because you were lazy.
Yeah. Well, and that's what kind of benefited me. So like I was supposed to go to the academy in January I was supposed to start in December. And the reason I didn't is my background investigator called me for like the deputy academy. He's like, hey, I'm sorry. I know you've been going to all these preparation classes for the academy, but I just realized you're not old enough to go to the academy. So we're going to have to push you back one class. So like, whatever, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was a few months. So fast forward to the deputy academy, kind of the difference between that and, you know, my civilian CSA academy, I was left alone. I was left alone for probably the first 10 weeks. They literally told me, I think week 6, I went to the office, like the TAC office once. And for those that don't know, you basically report to a TAC office. You know, you turn in reports, you turn in basically attendance slips. Like you're basically reporting to your staff.
And if you're the baby class, you're grabbing flags, you're returning flags, you're doing everything.
And when you go there, you fully expect to be there for an hour. And I mean, be there for an hour because you're doing push-ups, squat thrusts. Like you're doing everything and you're doing it in a full wool uniform with a cover.
Well, and for people that haven't been to an academy like that, because obviously there's a wide array of police academies across the United States. The Orange County Sheriff's Academy is definitely different and unique in that way. And I'm sure there's other academies like that out there, but I know it's few and far in between where you just get absolutely slayed day in and day out.
Yeah. I mean, we were probably doing like exercises, like whatever you want to call it, but it wasn't like you were doing CrossFit. Like you were either in the dirt they call it the beach. It's a big sandy pit, or you're in the hallway and you're doing cycle after cycle after cycle, like for hours. You're probably literally doing push-ups, squat thrust, and mountain climbers. That's 3 you would do in uniform. The 4th you would do sit-ups when you're not in uniform, when you're in PT gear. And you would literally do just those 4 exercises, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 hours a day.
And how long is the Deputy Academy?
26 weeks.
And when did you start that?
So I started that in March of 2015. Yeah, March of 2015. And
graduated in August.
I graduated in August 2015, it wasn't terrible for me because the first 7 weeks, I went to the TAC office once, and they said, we don't want to see you again. Like, don't ever come back, because you had to send volunteers for like flag duty, like certain things like that. The rest were selected by TAC officers for certain positions. And I remember they got me up for PT. Yeah, it was actually day one of the academy. And there's a certain protocol you have to follow for the academy. There's certain speeches you have to say. You have to do everything in a uniformed way that they prescribe. And I remember class sergeant quit, walked off, no longer in the academy. Class assistant quit, walked off, no longer in the academy.
And this is day one.
Day one. First platoon sergeant quit, walked off, no longer in the academy. So now I was in second platoon, or I don't remember, there was a second platoon, whatever. I was basically in charge of the second group in our class. So I was now the 4th man on the totem pole. That's what they made me day one. And I got up there and I killed it for about 5 minutes, and they fired me. They called it a field promotion. They basically promoted somebody out of the class to class sergeant.
Because day one, they don't want someone doing well. They want someone that sucks, and they want to punch the entire class for it. Because they want to weed that person out, and they want to show people, hey, this is law enforcement. Yeah. If you're weak, if you can't carry your weight, your partners are going to pay. Yeah. That's what the reality is on the street.
Yeah. So, and that's why I lasted a few minutes up there, and it was just like, all right, we're not even going to mess with this guy, because I knew my stuff. I was ready to go. I was in shape. I was locked in. Like that was all I wanted since I was a very young age.
But isn't it funny though? Like we talk about all this stuff, and it's not like the police academy, especially a police academy like that, there's so many unknowns. No, they have a massive binder of all the protocols that you have to do daily. So isn't that funny? Like, just if every single person in your class came as prepared as you are, they wouldn't even know what to do with you guys. No, they really wouldn't know what to do.
No, they wouldn't. And that's what it is. It's lack of preparation. It really is. Because you said if everybody just stepped up, you studied their protocol, you came and you were in shape, you're ready to run, you could do push-ups, you could do everything, you wouldn't be messed with. You wouldn't.
They would try, and it would be very difficult to figure out what to do with that class.
I remember one of our sergeants, he asked me what was Code Charlie. And for anybody that doesn't know, it's basically a mutual aid. It's a code in Orange County's police book.
And basically, like a paragraph long.
It's like a paragraph long, but it's basically requesting mutual aid from all surrounding agencies. And, they'd ask you like police codes and stuff like that.
Or a law enforcement code of ethics with 4 paragraphs, if I remember correctly?
Yep. And I remember they would ask me both of those pretty regularly, and I could spit them out like that. It was
And that's
ingrained
four
in my
law
memory.
enforcement code of ethics. That's 4 paragraphs, but you just took the time to prepare.
Yeah,
and do what you needed to do.
And they look at me and they'd walk away because it's like, what are you going to say to that? So preparation was key for me in that. But with that, again, I was the youngest in my academy class. You know, most people get into law enforcement 25, 26, and I was 20 years old going through the academy, and I ended up graduating as our class sergeant. So there's a class president and a class sergeant. I was class sergeant. Basically walked our class into graduation, which was super cool. I mean, I was proud to do it, but at the time too, like it didn't really matter to me because honestly, all I cared about was like, I want to be a cop. That's my goal.
That's your end goal.
That's my end goal.
Your goal wasn't to be the best in the academy.
No, it was like, yeah, it's a cool little pat on the back, whatever, you know, move on. Fast forward, I ended up getting sent to the IRC, which is the Intake Release Center.
That's where you worked as a CSA, right?
That's where I worked as a CSA. And it's kind of cool because, you know, they have modular housing being like 2-man cells, usually higher profile people, like higher, I guess, inmates. And I guess as far as their just different behaviors and their points, it's almost like a point system. Orange County is a little different than like state prison, but you're basically not working in a barracks. You're not working with dudes that are, you know, in for a DUI, for domestic violence. These are either hardcore gang members, they're murderers, they're rapists. Like that's who gets housed typically in 2-man cells, or they're aggressive towards law enforcement, like things like that. So I get sent there. I go through my training. I trained both in the modular housing unit and on, we call it the floor, which was basically the booking loop. So anybody that gets booked in Orange County comes into the booking loop.
And you mentioned your training at that time. What was the training environment like in that sheriff's department or in the jails?
I mean, training was kind of similar, both CSA and deputy, because you're honestly kind of around the same people. I do remember both of my training officers as a deputy were super good dudes, like super cool dudes. And they really took care of me and taught me, like they actually wanted to teach me. But I will say in law enforcement, and you experienced this with any group of people, honestly, a lot of people have egos, and I think their egos are definitely shaken when someone that's locked in comes through. You know, I remember when I was a 19-year-old, even when I was a 19-year-old CSA, there was a deputy that was like 29 years old, just rolled it up from patrol training, and just treated me like absolute dog shit for no reason, you know?
And this is someone that can't even pass patrol
He
training.
can't even pass patrol training. And I know what I've done in my career now and what in my background in law enforcement. I just laugh at that guy now. He actually got fired, but that's besides the point. But, you know, there's people like that, and they treat you poorly because, oh, well, that's just a new guy. You know, that's how we treat new guys. But you're a 2-year deputy sheriff, and it's just ridiculous. You know, I think there's a lot of unwritten rules that are ridiculous. Oh, you can't grow your hair out. If you do, you're disrespectful. Oh, you can't wear that type of uniform. If you do, you're not acting like a new guy. So I can't wear they call them jail jammies. They're 511 gear. I can't wear jail jammies in the jails for my first year.
Issued by the department. And there's also, I mean, obviously I've never worked in the jails, but just considerations like myself working in law enforcement, I understand the considerations as far as officer safety and wearing those types of uniforms, opposed to a badge that has a pin on the back or something like that.
Well, that, and you talk about diseases, MRSA, all this stuff that's in the jails, like truly like a lot of diseases that are in the jails. How much easier is it to throw your uniforms in the laundry rather than having to get them dry cleaned every time? It's just ridiculous. And I think that's kind of like, you can kind of breeze over that as far as everybody in law enforcement, I think, experiences that. And I think a lot of it is because of insecure people, insecure men and women that think they're legit and want to basically crap on other people to make themselves feel better. And if that's you, I mean, whatever, you're an idiot, I think. So, but other than that, I mean, the actual training portion was cool. I mean, I learned a lot. I think my eyes were really open at that point. So going out of high school, I was maybe 190 pounds. I'm 6 feet tall. I was like 190 pounds coming out of high school. When I graduated the academy, the deputy academy, I was 165 pounds. I was freaking so skinny. And it was because of all the running and everything else that we did. But when I walked into my first module as a deputy sheriff, dude, that's intimidating. You're talking about grown men that are doing life cases for murder, and they're fully blasted down and just ready to kill you if you turn sideways.
Well, and for people that don't know, that either worked at a police agency or have never worked in law enforcement, CSA, you don't have any inmate contact.
No inmate
deputy
contact.
Like you're a deputy, full inmate contact. You're in the mods with them. Like it is obviously you're the deputy.
Yeah.
So it's very different. Obviously, you going from a CSA to deputy because the environment is now changed of what your role is.
Exactly. And the big thing in the jails, like I learned, is that in the jails as a deputy sheriff, you're completely outnumbered. We were connected to another jail, the men's jail. You go to the men's jail, you go to Chow Hall, 200-300 inmates in Chow Hall. you're outnumbered, dude. If they want to turn on you and start stabbing deputies, dude, you're probably not going home that day. But I was taught very early on, there's strength in numbers and there's strength in setting the tone from the beginning. And so when I worked like the booking loop, dude, we would not tolerate anything. And I mean like disrespect, you know, you don't want to listen. You don't, because we like make them toe the line. And I mean like literally like there's a blue line and you walk it and you walk that blue line with your hands behind your back. And if you don't, you're going to be dealt with. And the reason is because when they get into a module with 300 people and there's 2 deputies walking the tier, they know if they act out, they have 40 more deputies coming for backup. So it's kind of creating that environment of, hey, this is the standards that we uphold here. And if you step out of line, you're going to be dealt with individually as an inmate.
Well, and it's also creating the environment too. If this isn't your house, because a lot of obviously they live there. They're there 24 hours a day. You're there 3 days a week, 12-hour shifts. Yeah. But it's still setting that tone that this isn't your house. Yeah. We're the ones running it. And at the end of the day, all that comes back to is it's not to be an asshole. It's so you go home at night. It's keeping other deputies safe.
Yeah. So like what I did, I was young. So obviously my first thing is I got to gain weight. So I ended up gaining. I went from 165 pounds to 240 pounds. On probation. Basically, in my first 12 months, I gained, 75, 85 pounds. And obviously, it wasn't all good weight. I had fat on me too, but I was doing everything I could. I was eating like 2 pounds of chicken a day. I was eating a pound of ribeye, 4 cups of rice. It was just insane what I was eating just to try to grow and get bigger because I wanted to start being able to handle myself in that environment. I started training Muay Thai at 20 years old. When I remember I worked midnights. I'd wake up at 11. I'd drive across the street to the Muay Thai gym across my house. I'd do Muay Thai for an hour. I'd drive back home and I'd go to sleep again. Basically waking up in the middle of the night to go do Muay Thai training. But it really did help me in my, not only my confidence, but my ability to handle people. And because I know like, even like when I was working the booking loop, I remember there was one time there was 2 Southern Hispanic gang members that came in and I was doing live scans. So I was basically just fingerprinting everybody that came into the jail. That was my job. That's all I did all night long. I'd probably fingerprint 100 people. That's what I did. That was my job at the jail during that shift, during that 6-month period. And I remember these 2 dudes, they were basically like, in the cell, and we could hear them. We could tell they were talking. There's probably 20 dudes in there, but these 2 in particular are like, hey, we're going to basically, when we come out, we're coming out swinging. So I was like, all right, dude, like, hey, you're putting a target on your back because you're locked in a cell and I can call all of my buddies and now you're going to come out swinging. Like, good luck. So like they did, and they didn't win. They lost that fight, Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I mean, I know there was a time I ended up starting to train people. So my time in the jails were kind of short. I became a jail training officer pretty quickly. And again, I think it was just my leadership abilities, my, ability to communicate with people, things like that. And I remember I had a trainee, we had this basically report that, hey, everybody at the men's jail is going to pop off this morning. They're going to green light all the deputies. Basically, they're going to try to hit the deputies because deputies got in a fight with a guy last night. He ended up splitting his head open when he fell. He fell and smacked his head on a door frame and split his head open. So all the other inmates like, all right, we're going to green light these deputies. So they put it out and said, hey, can we get some assistance over here? We need additional bodies. We're going to have like 200 people in Chow Hall, and so we need bodies. So we rolled over there, and there's probably like maybe 20 deputies in Chow Hall, me being one of them. And I got a trainee with me, and he's like, dude, what do we do if things pop off? I'd be like, dude, you got to find a wall, put your back on it, and start swinging. But it's like, hey, when we walked over there, I didn't walk over there thinking like, oh man, I'm so scared. We're going to get messed up tonight. No, every single deputy that walked in there like they were walking on water.
Well, my only question about that is, because obviously, like I said, I've never worked the jails, so I don't know how it operates in there. I don't know. I don't understand the regulations from the state. I don't know anything about it. If you know that potentially 200 dudes are greenlighting deputies, is there systems in place, or why are you allowing 200 inmates to go to Chow Hall at the same time? Or is there certain regulations that you have to abide by? I don't understand.
So obviously there's regulations on how to feed people. You have to feed people in jails, right? We're Title 15 is basically California's law and how jails need to operate. But with that, now like going into law enforcement further, working patrol, working things like where I worked search warrants, I worked like more like, I guess, higher end investigations and had to hire or handle more critical incidents. I've realized that, hey, there was probably a better way to handle that. Just walking in there like a bunch of knuckle draggers, like we can't be touched, probably wasn't the wisest. And I think that's part of the problem is sometimes we get in our own heads as cops. It's like, they call it tombstone courage, where it's like, that courage is going to send you to the grave. If I was the boss, I'd say, hey, we're going to feed everybody, but we're going to slow Chow Hall down. We're doing 50 people at a time. We're doing, I don't care if we feed people till noon. but we're slowing this down so nobody gets hurt today.
Well, and that's an important aspect of law enforcement. An important aspect is to have that courage and to be able to, act during that time of courage and not being able to show weakness. That's an important part and an important attribute in a law enforcement officer is being able to show that courage and not being able to show weakness. However, doing things wisely and prioritizing officer safety is not weakness. That's good leadership.
Well, and I think that was like kind of the thing that was like almost like it's almost like a negative in the jails. I remember there was an incident where like we had an incident with a federal Mexican mafia guy, and he was pretty upset with us, and a lot of the other guys in that module were upset with me and my partner, and we were told, hey, you guys are getting greenlit. You being one of them, me, Josh being one of them. So fast forward 24 hours later, all those guys are out in their day room, and we had to walk the tiers once an hour. It was like a check. So I asked my partner, like, hey, bro, what do you think? He's like, screw it, dude. Let's walk this tier together. So, all right, let's do it. There was 8 dudes in day room, and we walked the tier, and they were supposed to greenlight me that day. And remember the one guy that was saying that I was greenlit, as soon as I walked by him, he looked at me, put his hands behind his back, and faced the wall. And it's like, dude, how much does that say to everybody else? And I say that in a way of like, sometimes that courage is good because it's like, hey, dude, we're not going to be messed with. Like, you may live here, but this is our house, and we're in control. If you want to pop off, here's your opportunity. And if you don't want to, then keep your fucking mouth shut. Like, truly. You know what I mean? Because here's your opportunity. You're either going to do it or you're not.
Yeah.
And you didn't. So who's in charge now?
Yeah.
But, I mean, I had a great time there. I was able to work they had an emergency response team there for guys that barricaded in their cells, stuff like that. Before I moved out of the jails, I was the emergency response team leader. I was like 22 years old at the time.
How long did you work at the sheriff's department for?
I worked at the sheriff's department for 3 years, 2 years in the jails, and then my third year was technically in the jails, but I went to a jail compliance and training team. Basically, I worked an office job where I did training for all new CSAs coming in, all the correction academy guys coming in. I taught probably 50% of their courses in the academy, and then I helped create and write policy in compliance with basically state law, Title 15. We had attorneys that worked for the sheriff's department to make sure our policies were in place and they were in line with state law. And then my job was to push those out and train people in those. So I kind of wore a lot of hats at the time, but it was awesome, dude. Like, honestly, like for me at such a young age, it gave me an opportunity to learn so much in different aspects of law enforcement, from like being a team leader, but to being a compliance guy where I'm writing policy and now doing trainings. Like it gave me so much ability to do so many things, and I really appreciated it. But at the time, I really wanted to go to patrol, and I was on the patrol list, and I'd been itching to lateral to another agency since I graduated the academy. It was Santa Ana PD. And I kind of always knew growing up, Santa Ana was like the premier law enforcement agency in Orange County. The way they acted, the way they carried themselves, the police work that they did, high gang activity area. They were badasses, I thought, and that's where I wanted to work. And I was getting ready to go patrol, and I was like, hey, dude, if I don't go now, I'll never go. Because once I get through patrol training at the sheriff's department, like, why leave? I already went through training in patrol, which is 6 months of training of patrol. Like, why would I leave? So as soon as I got married, after my wedding, I applied for Santa Ana PD. I ended up getting hired, and then that's when I lateraled to Santa Ana.
What year was that?
That was in 2018.
So you were graduate academy, 2015, deputy academy. By 2018, you'd lateraled out of that department to Santa Ana PD.
I did like exactly 3 years. I went August of 2018. I went to Santa Ana.
Okay.
So I did 3 years with the sheriff's department.
And then when you started at Santa Ana PD, obviously you started as a patrol officer.
So I started as a patrol officer, worked patrol there. I trained there for 6 months until I was put on into a patrol team. I worked a patrol team on a swing shift, basically 2 in the afternoon, 2 in the morning. The following year, I went to midnight shift. I worked 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And then my third year there, I again went to another midnight team, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So I kind of worked a few patrol shifts with that agency.
Well, and talking about training there, I mean, obviously something I can respect. Obviously, I've never worked for any other agency, but something I can respect is I heard the stories. I hear how people talk about patrol training at departments like the sheriff's department, and then you go to patrol training at somewhere like Santa Ana, and it's completely different. It's like at the end of the day, you're a part of this team. You're a cop here. You might be new. However, we're going to treat you right, and we're going to make sure we do everything, because at the end of the day, you're still an investment. We're not trying to make you fail patrol training. Well, that mindset is so stupid. We're trying to make this guy fail. No, he needs to write reports. He needs to do the hard stuff. However, our goal in any environment, even as a business owner, is to push them to pass and push them to do well. And obviously, I'm sure you saw that when you had lateraled, the difference in that type of patrol training and talking to people that had went to patrol training with your last agency.
Well, huge difference. And the Orange County Sheriff's Department, I don't know what their ratio now is, but when I worked there, I don't know exactly the percentage, but I would say if I had to guess, probably 50% of people roll it up out of patrol, which is crazy. But it's because there, from what I understood and what I saw briefly, was people would get hammered over stuff that didn't matter. And it was because a lot of those areas are some of the safest cities in the state, and not all of them are. Orange County Sheriff's has a few bad areas they patrol, but there are areas that are really, really nice too. So what do you do when you have an area that's super nice and you don't have high violence and high crime rates? You just hammer them on stupid stuff. But then you go to somewhere like Santa Ana PD, where super violent area, a lot of gang activity, a lot of crime. Hey, dude, all we care about is that you do things safely. Because at the end of the day, that dude on training, that may be the dude that saves your life from getting shot in the back of the head. So we're going to teach you how to be a safe police officer, and we're not going to worry about all the little things. So I will say that's something I really did respect about going to that agency. I feel like I was treated very well on training, because they really want you to be part of that team, like you said. They expect you to be a partner in that. So that was awesome. I loved working there. I left for a lot of reasons. While I was there, I was able to work on a few different teams. One team that I ended up landing on before I actually left was the directed patrol team. And it was awesome, dude. And I think a lot of it comes down to your supervisor. I probably worked for one of the best supervisors I ever had in law enforcement at the time. And it was fun, dude. We wrote search warrants. We did, gang patrol. We did suppression work. We were serving probably a few search warrants a week. And it really it was really probably the best time I had in law enforcement. But unfortunately, like anything, it came to an end. And it came to an end for a lot of reasons. So.
Well, and I think too, just touching on you leaving, a lot of times law enforcement officers, we want to say, oh, it's the politicians, it's the politicians, it's the politicians. But the unfortunate thing, and we both saw it, and there's plenty of people that might be listening to this podcast that are in law enforcement and they see it. Sometimes our own worst enemy are each other. Because everyone wants to gossip, everyone wants to talk shit, everyone wants you never did anything right, you're wrong. I remember one of my partners, he stopped a 187, he stopped a murder vehicle directly after a homicide. Like, that's a great stop. That's a phenomenal stop, bro. A murder goes down, a description of a vehicle goes out, you're a mile away, you see the vehicle, you stop it, and the murderer's in there. And it's funny because it ended up being the murder vehicle. The dudes that did the shooting were in the vehicle, and one of our partners, the first thing they said was, "There's no way that's the car, man. There's no way. That doesn't make it. How would that make?" It's just because he was so jealous that they made a phenomenal stop doing police work that he had immediately had to knock that down.
Yep.
And that's just the environment, and unfortunately, it's in a lot of places. But obviously, we see a lot in law enforcement, and sometimes law enforcement cops, dude, we're our own worst enemies. If you want to do well in law enforcement, it's like, dude, just shut your mouth, put your head down, and work.
Yeah. But the bad thing about that agency is, if you want to do well in that agency, you had to be in line with the right people. And what I mean by that is, there's a lot of good dudes that work there. There's a lot of my friends that still work there. But unfortunately, a lot of the people that get promoted and a lot of people holding higher positions, they hold it because they're in that inner circle. And it's even things like, There's been full-blown investigations. You can look it up online. I went to internal affairs, and when I went to internal affairs one day for an investigation that wasn't about me, I wasn't notified. I was told last minute, and I walked up there, and there was somebody waiting to talk to me, to basically debrief me on what interview I was walking into. And the crazy thing is, when I walk in, what they tell you in that interview is, per POBAR rights, you can't talk about this to anybody. So how did that guy in the hallway, that's a supervisor here, that still works here today, how did he know? You know why? Because you told him before I walked up here.
Because he was trying to guide your interview.
Because you're trying to catch me before I go into the interview to guide what I say. And it's just crazy, bro. And it's crazy that those things can be brought to city council's attention. It can be brought to attorney's attention.
It can be brought to the DOJ.
It doesn't matter. And up to the chief of police, bro, will they protect that person? Because they're all about, and it's corrupt, dude. It's fully corrupt. And I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what anybody thinks about it. If you're on the other side of that and you can't see that, you're a freaking moron, quite honestly. You really are. Because there's guys out there doing good police work, doing a good job, and you're trying to keep this persona that you run this shit, but you're just trying to basically weasel your way through everything.
And how many good cops are you driving away because of this?
Yeah, exactly. You have good cops that love police work, that love doing the job, that couldn't stand being in the same room as you, and are disgusted that you're even still there. And not only still there, but you've been promoted numerous times. And there's multiple people like that. It's not just one person. There's a ton of people like that. But it's sad that that's the way that agency has went, because that was obviously, yes, the political climate of law enforcement pushed me out. I didn't want to be a cop in California anymore. However, I also didn't want to be a cop at Santa Ana. I didn't, because the people there that, some of the leaders there, they're losers, bro. They aren't leaders. They're weak men that are insecure, that try to use their power to basically stomp on with other people. And it's just sad, bro. It's not what leadership is. It's not what leadership's supposed to be. And the funny thing is, everybody sees it, but why do people follow stuff like that?
Because they don't want to create waves.
They don't want to create waves. Oh, don't create waves, man. Don't create waves. I know it's wrong, but don't create waves. It's like when I was getting hammered as a patrol officer by this one commander. He doesn't work there anymore, but I remember my sergeant would come to me multiple times like, hey, man, I know you're doing a great job. I know you're one of our best guys out here right now, but he wanted me to tell you this. And I'd be like, hey, Sarge, this is BS, right? Like, look at the policy. It doesn't even match what the policy says. He's like, I know, man, I know. I told him that he shouldn't mess with you, and he's messing with the wrong guy. But I had to tell you this. I said, no, you didn't. Like, if you really feel that conviction, then go up there and tell him yourself.
Tell him, I'm not going to tell him that because you're wrong. That's not what the policy says. That's not what this said. Like,
But
you're
why-
the one in the wrong.
But why wouldn't he do that? I don't want to create waves, man. I don't want to create
Just
waves.
doing what I'm told.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, bro, you have to have enough respect for yourself as a man before you look at the brass or the stripes on their shoulder. I'm not saying don't respect your supervisors, but there's a line, dude. And when that line is crossed and you no longer respect someone as a man, dude, honestly, I don't have respect for you because you don't have respect for yourself. You don't even respect yourself as a man. You're so consumed by this political environment that you're willing to do things that you don't believe in and things that you don't agree with just to not cause waves.
Yep. Well, and then that goes into, so what year did you end up leaving law enforcement altogether?
So I ended up leaving law enforcement in 2022. Yeah, 2022.
What kind of response did you get when you were leaving? Because obviously law enforcement's a career job.
Yeah. A lot of people were super happy for me. A lot of people told me, like, you're going to do awesome. Like, I'm really happy that you're getting out. Because people saw why. People knew why people were getting out of law enforcement. I remember one guy in particular. He's still a sergeant there. It's funny now because he still follows me on social media, likes my stuff and stuff like that. But he laughed at me, dude. Laughed at my face. I'm a grown man. And he's like, what are you going to go do? I was like, I'm going to be a plumber. And he literally started laughing at me. Like, dude, what's so funny about that, bro? Because guess what? Last company I worked for, the guy was an HVAC dude. And he sold this company for $150 million in 7 years. Is that funny to you? Because you're still working here.
One is just disrespectful.
Oh, it's completely disrespectful, but because you think you're better than them. And that was the problem. He thought he was better because I've been doing this for X amount of years. I'm better. You're not better, bro. You just chose a different path. So that was one. I mean, but majority overwhelming was really good. There was another guy. He was super nice. I remember super nice guy. He was an older gentleman. He didn't work at Santa Ana. Like he was assigned there, but he actually worked for the DA's office. And he was a retired cop. And he pulled me aside and he was like, hey, man, like you have a great career. You have a lot ahead of you. I was able to do this career for 30 years. And I worked 6 days a week providing for my family by myself. And I remember his partner, who was a Fullerton sergeant that retired and worked for the DA's office, he was laughing at him. He's like, dude, you're saying that it was glorious to work 6 days a week? Like kind of realizing, like kind of telling him like, hey, dude, like maybe this was your path, but this isn't his.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with leaving. I think that's a hard thing in law enforcement is you get into this environment where you think you have to stay. You're locked in for 30 years. Like, dude, when I sat in the academy, they said, hey, 50% of you won't be here at the end of your career. I sat there, I thought, not me. I'm going to be here my whole career, dude.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing the rest of my life.
That's what I thought too. I remember.
You kind of open your eyes and you see the potential that's out there and what's, available to us and what you can do in this world. And
Well, in law enforcement's a great career.
It's
still
career.
a great career.
loved
There's
it.
still awesome people that work in law enforcement that we know personally that still work in law enforcement today.
It's a lot of fun too.
But it's the unfortunate thing is the political climate and the internal politics.
The internal politics is probably one of the worst things in law enforcement today. And I don't think it's isolated to that one agency.
Oh, hell no.
I think it's
across the board, dude.
And I think that, if there's going to be any change in law enforcement, number one, the leaders have to step up. The leaders in law enforcement have to learn to step up and really learn what it means to be a leader.
Well, and every individual, I think, needs to really get out of that mindset of, I don't want to create waves. Bro, you have to, there has to be a hill you're willing to die on, bro.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, you have to take your stand at some point.
Yeah. Because, dude, at the end of the day, that's what happens, dude. Guys don't want to cause waves, and they spent their whole career getting bent over. Mm-hmm. And it's like, dude, for what, man? Like, you're a man, and you sit here and you post on social media that I'm the one that guards you at night and I'm this and I'm that. Cool, man. You're a real hard dude, but you can't tell your supervisor that he's wrong. You're such a badass, but you can't step up and say, that's wrong. You can't do that.
Well, that's the unfortunate thing too, is like, that's what law enforcement's about. It's about not being a sheep. It's about standing in the face of adversity and doing what's right, even when everyone else wants to do what's wrong.
Yep.
That's what being a cop is about.
Yeah.
But once you get into that internal culture, it's no longer about what's doing what's right. It's about, oh, you're a Blue Falcon. And unfortunately, that's just a large issue that's seen across the board in a lot of places. Go moving past all that. So
Yeah.
you leave law enforcement in 2022. You're going to start plumbing. Did you have an experience plumbing prior to this?
So I had no experience plumbing. I remember still, I was in Ontario, California with my brother-in-law, Jared, who works for us now. He's the one that got me into plumbing. And he was, dude, I was 27 at the time, maybe 27 and maybe 26. I don't remember exactly, but I was in my mid to later 20s. And Jared at the time was like 22. And I was asking him, like, hey, dude, like, because he kept telling me, like, dude, you can get into plumbing. Like, I'll get you in. Like, the owner will hire you. I've already talked to him. So I asked him, I was like, hey, dude, like, just be realistic with me. We were driving to pick up something from Hobby Lobby for his baby shower. And I remember I asked him, like, dude, be honest with me. How much money do you actually make? Like, that's what I need to know. Like, I provide for my wife now. Like, what will I take home to provide for my wife? Like, you know, on a bad month, I make like 10 grand a month. On a good month, I make like 20 grand a month. And dude, I was floored, bro. I couldn't believe it. I was like, are you serious, bro?
22 years old plumbing,
what
bro.
am I doing as a police officer, dude? Like, this is crazy. So that sold me right there. I was like, all right, dude, I'm in. I'm 100% in. We were pregnant at the time. No, it was actually.
And for perspective too, he didn't own his own company.
No,
he was a plumber at a service repair company in a van.
Yeah, so it was actually my baby shower. But from there, I was like, all right, I'm all in. I'm leaving law enforcement. I'm gonna be a plumber. And so it happened pretty quickly. You know, we ended up having our first baby girl, Josie, in April of 2022. Yeah, 2022, we had Josie. I had 6 weeks off. I took 6 weeks off. It was basically all my vacation time, and I drained all of it with Josie in her first 6 weeks. And it's because I knew I wasn't coming back, so I might as well drain my vacation time while I had it. I drained my time. I went and I applied for a job at Mr. Reuter, and I got a new rental house in the Inland Empire. You know, I was living in Orange County at the time, so I wanted to be a little bit closer to where my new job was going to be. And then I came back to work, and I put my 2-week notice in. And by June, I was plumbing, and that's pretty much how I got into the trades. And it happened pretty quickly for me. The guy that I worked for, gave me an opportunity, and I always definitely will appreciate that. I learned how to plumb. I got into my own service van. I started plumbing. I ended up doing $1 million in plumbing and like installs on my first year. So me personally, I sold our shop was doing about 10 million a year at the time. I did $1 million of that out of my own van. And then I ended up getting promoted to a management position there, like a field manager position. That was super cool. That was super short-lived though, just because we ended up having pay cuts and stuff. And at the time, I wasn't mad at the owner. I still have a relationship with him. I told him just quite frankly, like, hey, you're doing the best thing for your business by cutting payback a little bit. I get it. It's a hard time for your business. You have to look out for your business, but I have to look out for my family. So I went to a different shop in Southern California that basically was matching the pay that I had as a manager. And so I was a field manager at a very large shop in Southern California. And that's really where my eyes opened to potential of owning a company. And I always wanted to own my own company, but the gentleman I worked for, he's now like the CEO of the company. He sold it to a company a few years back. But I think at year 7, he sold it for $150 million.
That's crazy.
Sold it for $150 million in year 7 of business. And I was like, dude, I don't even want $150 million. I mean, yeah, now I would love to do $100 million a year. But, at the time, it's like, dude, like if I could get a fraction of that from growing a company and selling it, that's freaking amazing. So
yeah.
It really opened my potential to what the home service business can do and what you can do running a business. Fast forward from there, some things happened personally in my life, and I think we can get into that in a later podcast. But kind of forced me out of California very quickly, where I didn't want to be there anymore. A lot of very personal things with our family that it was a very bad environment with extended family. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to move to Tennessee with my brother, with you. And we moved out here, and then, dude, it took off from there. I applied at 2 companies. Both of them said they wanted to hire me. Hey, yeah, we'll call you back. And it was cheesy, bro. It was, again, an owner of a company that I had an interview. He didn't show up for the interview. His wife interviewed me. Cheesy, didn't even know I was coming. Hey, we really need somebody. We really want someone to start immediately. Okay, perfect. I can start December 1st. That's when I want to start work. 2 weeks from now. Didn't get a call back till like December 15th. Hey, we want to hire you. Cool. I already have my plumbing license in the state, and I'm going to be opening my own company. No text back. It's just cheesy, bro. Poor leadership,
Not, hey, man, sorry we didn't get back to you sooner. I hope you well on
you would have been a
your
great
own
asset, something. No, nothing. But that just shows who that person is, right? But it's why you've been in business for 2-3 years as a plumbing company, and you have 2 plumbers, or you were looking for your second plumber being me. So it's because of how you treat people. So but that really just catapulted me into like where I was here. I had no job. I had a little bit of savings, and I had a very, very high limit on my credit card. And I said, you know what? I got to make something happen. We can go into the business growth and stuff like that. But, we went head first, and dude, it's been a journey, but it's been probably the best decision I've made. Getting out of law enforcement, learning a trade, and then opening a business.
Yeah. And obviously, I know you, no regrets in law enforcement, no regrets, anything. I mean, you enjoyed your time in law enforcement. You love being a cop. You worked with some great people. There's some things here and there that were negative about it. However, it's still a great profession. There's still great people still doing, good things in law enforcement.
We need good cops.
And we need good cops.
Yeah.
We need good police agencies. And at the end of the day, it just wasn't right for you anymore, and it wasn't what you wanted anymore.
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, I think it's a great place, Josh. Obviously, I think most people have probably learned a lot more about you that they might not have known prior. And obviously, from the time you were in high school to now, obviously, it's been quite a different journey and different jobs, different avenues that have gotten you here. But I certainly think that, and I'm sure you can attest to it, that you're the person you are today because of all of those experiences.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think everything that I've been through in life, personally, professionally, has made me the person that I am, and it's created perseverance, it's created resilience, it's created leadership abilities, it's created good communication skills, it's given me a love for people, truly. I care about my employees, I care about people, I care about people having a good life. I'm not just running a business to try to create a good life for my family. I want a good life for my guys and their families, and our office personnel and their families. Like, truly, bro, like all my experiences has really been giving me just a great outlook in life. And I'm super grateful for everything that, I've been able to experience. And I don't want this podcast to come across as I'm bashing anybody like in law enforcement. I mean, there's some people I bashed, obviously, but truly there's a lot of good dudes out there. I love a lot of the dudes that are still there. A lot of the dudes are my good friends still. And it's a great agency, but it definitely needs to be revamped. They need some new leadership. They need to get rid of the bad apples. They need to get rid of those idiots that are in charge right now. Some of the idiots, they're not all idiots, but there's a lot of idiots still in charge that have power there and exert their power. And I won't say that don't believe that's true, because I believe that is true. There are bad people that work there that shouldn't be there, but then there's a lot of good people that work there as well. So super grateful for my time, super grateful for my experiences, but super happy to be out and happy to be doing what I'm doing now.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for tuning in to episode 2. Stay with us 2 more weeks. We'll have another episode for you. Episode 3 is coming out soon. Stay tuned.